So this is a picture, a photograph of my parents with my brother, who is the second oldest in our family, in my mom's arms. He was just a baby. He was under a year old in this photo. And I grew up knowing this photo. My mom and dad outside one of the houses that they lived in PA. And they looked very happy in that photo, and she's carrying her baby. And I knew that it was my brother, so my sister was 5, because he was just 1. He was just little. They're 5 years apart. But one day I realized when I was looking at this, I kept going back to this photo and thinking about how am I going to incorporate Mom and Dad into this story, and my sister Darlene. How will I incorporate them? And then I realized that this photo was when she was 5, when she was starting school. So this was the age they were at when they had to make the decision of whether or not they were going to keep speaking Cree to her. This was the age they were at when their child came home and they were shocked to find out that their child had been hit without their permission by a stranger, and in this place where they thought she was going to be safe, in this school. And it was traumatic. I think they were just as traumatized as my sister was. And so this photo took on a whole other meaning for me. And I had it in this old frame. I think the old frame came from my sister, one of my sisters or my mom. It was an old kind of kitschy little frame from the Woolworth store or someplace. But it was the kind of frame that my mom really liked. She thought it was really pretty, ornamental. And I had it on the wall in my studio, and I just kept looking at it. I don't know how many times I looked at it when I realized, or before I realized, that this was them at that age. And it could have been, because I don't know what time of the year this was taken, or what, is this when school had started in the fall? It could have been right around the time that it happened, but it was in that year that the incident happened. So seeing that, understanding and recognizing that that was the age they were at, just totally changed how I saw the photo. And it became an important indicator of me and a reminder of that moment where they had to make the decision. This is the first of the 3, and I wasn't sure. I wanted to do this one, and then I wanted to somehow take them out of the frame, and I wasn't sure how to do that. So I played around with a few different styles until I came to the style that is the second one. This is the second of the 3, and this is looking at my parents, and they're out of the frame now, and they're becoming more life-size. So it's kind of a metaphor painting for me understanding, and as I understand more and more, and I start to relate to what their decision was and how it connected to their understanding of Cree parenting and keeping those children safe. Then it became more and more, they were coming out of the frame and they were becoming more lifelike, more life-size, and relating to me as a parent and what I would have done in the same situation that they were in. So I've removed the frame, and I've just have them just becoming larger and larger. It's the same image. There's some adjustments that I made deliberately. It's difficult when you're recreating the same shape to keep it exactly the same. And I actually was fine with it. So they're not perfectly identical in all 4 renderings of my parents and my brother. And I'm fine with that because as I'm adjusting my way of thinking and understanding, and the impact of understanding what they went through and why they made their decisions, and the actual sacrifices that came with those decisions, sacrifices for them, not us, for them, it's different. I'm seeing them, they're evolving and changing and kind of morphing slightly differently in each one, but it's still the same image of my parents and my brother at that age. And it's important that it's about them at that age. And I still have that photo, And I look at it and I still think about that was when it happened. That was when these changes started that nobody had any control over. And so me as the sixth child coming along, I had absolutely no choice. They were speaking only English to us, period. So this is the third piece. This is me standing with them in full understanding. After all my research and all my consideration, all the discussions that I had with other Cree people, with older people that I have a lot of respect for, and some of them are teachers of mine. You know, my siblings, I had several conversations with different siblings and my kids, and after all of that, I came to fully understand what it was that they did, and so how that impacted me and my responses, my feelings when I was asked the question, do you speak Cree? And I completely and unequivocally say with absolutely no shame that no, I do not speak Cree. And I don't speak Cree because my parents they were forced to make a decision to protect their kids. And I absolutely stand beside them. So my hands are on my hips in defiance. And I'm standing with them because I know that if I had been put in the same position that they were in, I would have done the exact same thing, because it was about protecting the kids. So the position that they've actually, because of my brother as a baby, trying to position things so that we could all of us be in there, it ended up with me being on the sides of mom and dad. And scaling up the small photo, the gap between my parents was too great for me to be beside them. So I'm right in the middle. And so there they are still protecting us. And I think as, now understanding fully what it all meant, them being on either side of us, still protecting us, is still happening, because they're what they did and why they did it. My understanding, my mom sharing that story with me so many years ago, it's given me strength to stand up to those people who are shaming and ridiculing and being so negative. And I have absolutely no problems anymore with the fact that I don't speak Cree. I would like to speak Cree, and I've been trying to learn, but I don't know that in my lifetime I will pick the language up. I'm confident that some of our kids or grandkids will bring it back, but it might not be me, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I think that it does not make me less Cree, because I was raised in a Cree lifestyle, in a Cree way. My dad lived a Cree lifestyle. And so I know who I am, I know my place, I know my ancestors, where I come from, who they are, and I know that my parents loved us and loved me, so I have no problems with this language gap the way I did before. My issue with language loss is related to how people that do have the language are not helping. They're not helping by shaming. They're not helping by ridiculing or pointing out that we're saying it wrong. If they know the language, I'm really happy for them, because I think that's a gift, to be able to speak more than one language. And the language of your ancestors, that's a really powerful thing. But we can survive without Cree anymore. We don't need Cree to survive. And so getting that language back is a desire. It's not necessarily a need. I don't need it to survive. I can survive without it, but I would really like to have it. And anybody who has that language should be helping in a good way, in a gentle way and kind way, that it wasn't our fault. We didn't intentionally not speak our language. And help us instead of shaming and ridiculing. They should be helping. And so, for the Cree speakers, for the language speakers of any language, don't judge the people who can't speak it, because you don't know their circumstance. And in all likelihood, they did not stop speaking because they were ashamed. So this piece is called So Small, and this is representing my sister going into the school that we all went to in Prince Albert, Central School. It was torn down years ago, and the mall is now sitting where the school used to be. But the school, it was a typical three-story brick schoolhouse. And I tried to calculate the scale of a 5-year-old child standing next to that large brick building. Because when you go into a school, you're going alone. You don't have parents there protecting you. And you know, the parents, and including myself as a parent, we send our kids into these spaces and hope that they're going to learn and be happy in those spaces, and it's not always a pleasant place to be. And there's nothing that we can do to help them. When they leave us and go into that building, they're on their own, and they have to navigate this incredible, complex place, and all the dynamics of the personalities and the authorities and, you know, the system, all by themselves. They have to navigate through. So this little child that is, I'm not trusting my scale calculations, but according to the scale markup that I did, this would have been the size of her next to that large school. And so she's on a one-point path perspective, going by herself into this huge building that's physically and metaphorically large. So large, and she has absolutely no control, and she's all alone. And that's what happened to my sister when she went into school that day. She was strapped. And that's, our kids are trying to survive and navigate through these places, right, that are not always friendly and supportive. So that's what this is about. It's about being alone as a child and having no choice. Because at the time, there was no choice. There was no homeschooling. The kids had to go to school, or the parents went to jail, right? You were fined or you went to jail. And there's only one way to look at this, one way of education. It's a one-point perspective. So this, to me, is one of the most significant pieces in this body of work. So these 4 pieces are representing the statistical reality of language loss in my own family. The first one is this pink one here, and this is representing how the school came between my parents and us, and especially me. That's me on the right as a little girl when I was about 5. And the counter on the bottom is keeping track of the number of people in my family. So I'm number 6 out of 7 kids that they didn't teach Cree to or didn't speak Cree to, and so the number on that first counter is 6. And then the next one is me on the left and my 3 kids on the right. And the number now is up to 9, because I couldn't speak Cree, so I couldn't teach them either. Then the third one is myself as a child, my 3 kids as a child, and then my 8 grandchildren. And so the number increases, adding that 8 to show that, you know, just with me, there's this many of us that are without our language. And then I started thinking, okay, well, it's not just me. I have siblings. I have 5 sisters and a brother. And so on the left of the blue piece is me and my kids and my grandchildren. And on the right is my siblings, starting with my sister at the very back in the top, the center. That's my sister. And then the rest of us and all of their kids and their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And so at the point that I did this, it was 68 and counting. And there's a little fetus represented, because one of my nieces and nephews, one of my nephews' partner was pregnant. And so there was no, and I included the little kids because we can't talk to them in Cree. We can't sing to them or soothe them in Cree. And when a baby is growing in your belly, you tend to want to talk to them. You talk to them a lot, and sometimes you sing to them, and we couldn't. They didn't hear the Cree language even when they were growing inside of us. So 68 and counting with just my family, and representing that number visually has had a big impact on people that look at it, because you can see the number, you can hear the number, and it's a number, and you know that it's a high number. 68 of us. Now we're in the 70s, because we've had several kids since then, since I did this work. Several babies have been born. So you hear the number and you think, okay, yeah, that's a pretty high number for just what happened to one little girl. It ended up resulted in all these others being impacted. But when you actually see it visually represented, it changes it, right? Then you see that number. You don't just hear the number, you see it. And so if that's one family, what about my dad's brothers and sisters? Because most of them had kids and grandchildren that didn't speak Cree. And my parents, none of my parents, my mom's siblings have kids and grandchildren who speak Cree. So what about all of them? And that's one family. What about the community of this one and that one? And you start adding people, and exponentially the number grows. And so you could literally fill the walls of a gallery with a painting full of representing the people that don't speak their language, and you would run out of room. So I think it's important to see that you don't just hear the number, that you see a visual representation of it, because then it really impacts you.